Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bootstrapped Solo. My name is Pratik Shah. I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own practice. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest is Tim Mott. He runs an 18-person practice out of Las Vegas, Nevada that focuses on personal injury. He started his practice in 2018, where he joined his partner, Mike Valiente, who we had on part one of the Valiente Mott series, and they've been growing strong ever since. Tim, welcome to the show.
Pratik, thanks for having me. I'm excited to hang out and chat.
No, I'm so glad you came on. You know, we had Mike on a week or so ago, and he gave us some of the background, what was going on, but I think we want to get kind of your sense of it. And he told us that, you know, what Tim's experience was very different than his experience. So your experience was very different than his experience. And so, you know, I really want to get into that because he brought up some interesting things. You and Mike first met in law school, is my understanding. Is that correct?
So Mike was in law school. Mike's got 3 or 4 years on me, but he did real estate, so he had a separate career. So I went to law school. I did college, straight to law school, straight to practice by the time I was 25, 26. So I think I was about 5 years in when Mike joined, but he was in law school and there was a dinner with the Rebel Lawyer program. We went to dinner, we hung out, we chatted, had a good time. It's me getting to know a law student, and we connected from there and stayed in contact from that point forward.
And was that your first time doing that Rebel dinner program, or was that something you consistently did at your firm?
So it was something I did on my own, right? It was more just to build more relationships, especially with law school students. Highly recommend all law school students do that if they have a type of program for you, as well as lawyers. Because then what you could use it for, what we always use it for, is A, to get to know them, and B, opportunities for them to refer you cases, right? They don't know lawyers. They don't know people how to refer cases. So use that as an aptitude to generate business as well.
And I got to imagine, you know, if you were working for a larger defense firm, it's a good recruiting tool too, to see if you take a bunch of people out to dinner, you get to see who's going to be a good fit personality-wise at your firm versus just, you know, an interview process.
100%. The standard, which actually I think they got it so right at Weinberg Willer, is it's a great firm. High-end cases everywhere. You know, all lawyers are generally higher up in their class, but their criteria is you get some of the top people and you just go to lunch, go to dinner, hang out. And if this is the type of person you can just hang out and have a beer with or a soda with, in my instance, then this is the kind of person you want to work in your firm. You got to spend so much time together. So yeah, getting to know them on that level helps big time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you know, if you were doing this dinner for a couple of years, you know, as part of kind of what you did at Weinberg Wheeler, I got to imagine you met tons of law students just doing this over and over, right?
Yeah, met a good amount.
Yeah. So then what was it about, like, why Mike, out of all the law students you met, that was the guy you decided to go and start a practice with versus anyone else?
So what happened from there, and this is a big credit to Mike, one of Mike's best attributes is perseverance. He will, if he meets someone that could provide value to him or that he just really likes, he will constantly stay in contact with that person. It's shocking how many people are so bad about it. You know, you go to lunch with all these law students and they're so excited to meet you. They got all these things they want to talk to you about. And then 95% of them, you'll never hear from them again. And I think it's just they don't want to bother you, and Mike just doesn't care. So like he'll bother you. Yeah. It's not bothering you, but he thinks it is.
Yeah.
So ultimately, he ended up coming and he sent me his resume. He was number one in his class, so you know it's easy to get him the job, and he's a cool guy. So I got him lunch with the managing partner. They hit it off. They offered him a job, and then that's when he worked at Weinberg Wheeler for about a year, 9 months, and that's when he branched off. So we actually worked together at Weinberg Wheeler for 9 months. So we really had a chance to get to know each other there. I was kind of his mentor at Weinberg Wheeler. That's kind of where the connection built stronger than ever.
And I would personally still consider you his mentor, just for the record.
No, I appreciate. I'm like, did he share that? There's no way Mike would say something like that. But
no, he didn't say that. I'm just saying that and hoping Mike hears this. And
yes, he will. He will. He does look up to me, but it's because he's 5'4" and he looks up to everyone. You know,
okay.
You know what it is.
You know, so, you know, one of the reasons I'm asking this process is because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are thinking about striking on their own. Maybe they've been on their own. You know, for me, when I was on my own, I was completely on my own for about 2 years when I decided like I really wanted to have a business partner because there were just things I wasn't good at that I wanted somebody else to do. You guys have been business partners forever. I mean, it seems like a long time. Have you ever run a business with a business partner before Mike?
No, I never started a business until we started this, right? First, when you started the law firm, kind of risky. And you know what? I'll jump back and kind of give the origin story for how I went based on how he went, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But to me, I think it's really helpful in that he was always the type of person that was going to go start a law firm, right? Like that was always in his mind. Me, more risk averse, right? I got a wife and several kids. Well, I got 4 kids now. At that time, I think I had 2 or 3 kids, and like not willing to go out there, had a safe route, good job, good salary. Didn't want to do it. He kept, talking to me and pestering me a little bit because he needed someone that had more experience too. He only had 9 months in the law.
Yeah.
And we kind of hit it off. And, he's the one that gave me the push to do it. I don't think I would have done it independently, if I'm being honest, right? I think earlier on, that was hard for me to admit, is like, I would have done this. I would have been successful without him, but I wouldn't have done it without him giving me the push. Like I needed that push. But once I took the push, I was all in and, feel like I was meant for this, right? It's worked perfectly. But, he's the one that kind of gave me the push to get it going. And he had some money set aside from prior real estate deals, and I had less money set aside because I was trying to pay off student loans. So I went all in. I sold the house. I had a wife and 3 kids. We sold our house, took the equity, used that to pay off student loans, had an extra, big chunk of money set aside that's what's going to float us for the next 9 months. And if we survive, we survive. If we don't, we don't. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta deep dive into that because that's I think a story in and of itself. So you have this great job at a firm that you seemingly were happy at. They were paying you pretty well. You were doing okay. Wife, kids, things seem to be on a certain path, right? This is kind of what we're going down. It's what your wife had signed up for, right? Everything's okay. Right. And then you sit her down one day and you say, well, honey, we're selling the house. How'd that happen?
You know what? I'm lucky because and I'm not just saying this because she's going to watch the podcast, but that would be a reason I'd say this. I have the most supportive wife in this world. And like, talk about someone who believes in you more than anyone or anything. I'm such a wuss. I get emotional over stuff like this. I'm not going to cry though. She believes in me more than anyone I've ever met in my life. She has ultimate faith and trust in me. And so what it really was more than anything is we're going back and forth, and I wanted the security of the job. And, I know what it's going to look like next year. I actually had ownership in the firm. I was junior partner, which gave you ownership and had equity in the firm, massive firm. Wow. And, I knew what it was going to look like next year. I was going to be a full-blown partner. And every year I knew what that salary looked like because I had access to all that.
Yeah.
And I had the conversation with her. That's really what it came from. I told her I was missing my kids' baseball games, and my family and my wife and kids the most important thing in this world to me. And I was missing their games even when I was coaching just because I was at the office late. I finally asked her, I'm like, if I made, let's just say 40% less money with 40% of our current salary, but I was able to be home at night for dinners more consistently. I was able to make it to all the Little League games. I was able to travel more freely when we won. I wasn't so tied up with trials or other things. Would that be worth it to you? And her response was absolutely no brainer. And then I gave her like the 1 in a million scenario, right? Where I'm like, what if the managing partner from Atlanta came in and offered me $1 million salary? Never happened in a million years. We knew that would never in a million years would happen. I said, what if he came and offered me $1 million to stay? Do you think it'd be worth it to stay for that money? Or do you still think it'd be worth it to leave knowing making 40% of current to be more time with the family? And she's like, more time with the family. And so once she said that, you realize like, then what are we doing? That I'm doing this for the money to make a good sound. Like, what are we doing?
Right. So because a lot of us, like yourself, I was married when I started mine and still married, of course. And it's like, you think like your job as the husband or the father is to be the provider. And what that means in the modern world is to just generate income and go out and get money. So you go out there and you're singularly focused on my job is to go generate funds for the family. And then when you actually talk to the family and they're like, that's not the most important thing to us. This is more important. And exactly what you're saying is it makes you reassess, wait a minute, how does this make any sense? This doesn't make sense why we're sacrificing what we really want for the thing that I think we want, but we don't actually want. So that's really interesting.
Could not agree more. And, and then once you have those realigned, right, the priorities realigned of what are we doing here and what are we really going for, it actually made the conversation to sell the house and all those things very easy, right? That was, look, we need this capital. We have a lot of equity in the house. We need the capital more to, let's just get rid of these student loans so I don't have to worry about them again. And the money to float our lives for the next 9 to 10 months while we build this up. And it wasn't even a hard conversation at that point. It was very simple. Wow. The hard conversation was, do we start this firm and give up what we have? Once we made that commitment, everything else was easy. Looking back, it sounds crazy, right? Like, you know, wife and 3 kids, giving up a salary that was more than I ever thought I'd make and selling my house to go work in a, 10 by 10 office with me and Mike with no clients. You know, it seems crazy now that I say it out loud, but at the time we were all in on it.
There's a lot of that, right? Like when you're going through it, I mean, when I look back on the stuff that, we went through, it was like, you don't think it's crazy when you're doing it. And then you look back, you're like, that probably wasn't very smart. Like I probably wouldn't advise like I remember putting mediations on credit cards because like I didn't have the money. And I'm like, I probably wouldn't advise other people to do that, but like I did what I had to do and it worked out, So it is always when you look back, you go, man, that sounds kind of crazy, but when you're taking it day by day, it doesn't feel that way. But I want to go back one step because you had the conversation with your wife where you said, hey, if I make 40% less, would we be okay? Would you be okay with that? She said, yes. Now the question is, that first year out of Weinberg Wheeler, did you make 40% less or less than that or more than that? How did you do?
You know what? We had a first year that probably not many people would have because we hit just an absolute home run on one case. We settled a case for $3,250,000 and some change. Signed it up in July, settled it in December, and that was in our first year. Now, we didn't know it was going to work like that. We got full policy limits on all of it because it was so horrific, which put money in the bank, right? So no, I actually made the exact same amount of money that first year as I would have made if I stayed at Weinberg Wheeler and then progressed from there.
So then did you make the decision to sell a house before that case settled or after, and you just put all that money into the firm? How did that work?
No, that was before. So sold the house in what? December or January, probably 2018. Then me and Mike started Valiente Mott March 1st, 2018.
Oh, got it. So you did it even before you before you joined Mike.
Yeah. Just to free up the money. So we had it and didn't have to worry about, any capital issues, at least for the first year. And that's always the advice you always give first lawyers. Mike and I both do it independently from our own experiences. Like you got to make sure you have enough money to float your life in that firm for that first year. Because even if you're signing up, when you're starting out 10 cases a month, which no one signs up 10 cases a month when you first start out. But even if you are, it's going to take, best case 6 months for that first case to turn over, realistically 9 to 15 months. So you got to be able to float your life somehow. So that's the reason I sold the house. So we had the money.
Wow. What do you think you were signing up in your first couple of months? I mean, obviously you signed up this one case. You thought it could potentially be big. You don't know. You just never know until the case settles. So you're constantly working on other cases, looking for other cases. What do you think you were signing up on an average typical month when you first started?
I still remember it so well. It's not even guessing. It's those March, April, May. We actually signed up roughly 5 to 10 cases each of those months from Mike and I each pulling all of our resources, right? Family, friends, other attorneys, taking people out every single day. We had lunches with other attorneys, just trying to catch one referral, and establish those relationships. So it was roughly 5 to 10 each of those first 3 months. And we're like, all right, this is going to work, right? Things are rolling. And then, this ties into a whole nother story. And then June and July, we signed up a total of 9 cases in those 2 months together, and then had to drop 3 of them, which means in 2 months, we signed up 6 cases when we thought everything was picking up. And that was the point when we started, one of those end up being this gold mine of a case, right? But all the others, that led us to start stressing a little bit, right? Of you start getting the doubt of can we generate the business? Can we do this? Yeah. Are we going to survive? And then some things happen I attribute to some personal beliefs, and we ended up signing up a ton of cases. We signed up 23 cases in a 3-week span in August, which then changed the trajectory of everything. But yeah, early on, it was peanuts. Me and Mike doing everything we can to get any case we could signed up.
Yeah, so let's talk about kind of how you were getting those cases. You mentioned kind of taking other attorneys out to lunch. Were you taking out personal injury attorneys and asking for cases they didn't want? Were you taking out non-personal injury attorneys? How did that work?
Good question. So we made the decision early on, and I think a lot of people said we were stupid for it, but to this day, attribute a lot of our success to this is we refused to sign up just that garbage and trash that other people didn't want. Garbage and trash meaning, I think most lawyers or the audience here, they know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Just disputed
no liability.
Yeah. Disputed liability, low impact collision with a, month treatment gap. We just avoided that because that takes up all of your time and resources, and you never, you get paid $1 an hour on those cases. It's just not worth it economically. So early on, the way we're getting cases less from personal injury lawyers, and we're meeting, any lawyer we ever went to law school with, every lawyer we ever knew that's in a different field, offering them aggressive referral fees, right? We'll give you whatever, 33% on any case we sign up. We've even offered more than that, just any case we sign up, we'll send it to you, and just relationships, trying to get them, preaching what we'll sell to them. That was the biggest avenue. And then same thing with friends and family. I think what was hard for me, and I don't know if it would fit the category of most lawyers starting at a law firm, it is, aggressively just asking for cases from like friends and family. That's just not, that's not my nature. That's more Mike's nature. Mike's got no problem, like, calling his, whoever and being like, why haven't you sent me any cases? I know, someone's been in an accident. What are you doing? Send me cases. Stop being a bum. That's not my personality, right? I just want to help people.
I like the Mike
right?
voice too. That was a good Mike voice.
What's that?
Too. That was a good Mike voice, the impersonation.
That's right. That was less my personality. So he was better at that skill, no question. That's something I had to acquire and learn. And, you learn different ways to do it. But yeah, just any other lawyer referral fees, friends and family, you can't give referral fees, but it's like, we need you. Help us out here, guys. We're trying to survive. And then there's, other avenues we eventually got into, but those first 9 months, you don't have money. We don't have money for marketing. The best we could do is buy you a $10 lunch at Cafe Rio,
Yeah. So, how much of your time in that first, let's say 6 months was spent trying to generate business, either, friends and family, networking, etc., versus actually working on cases?
Oh man, I would say half the time.
Yeah.
That's a rough estimate, but we didn't have enough cases to occupy our time anyways, right? You have so much freedom early on. So what we really devoted our time to is working on those cases to perfection. No one worked a $25,000 policy. Actually, it was $15,000 back then, policy case like we did, right? We had 50 hours of lawyer work on that one case just because you had the time to do it.
Yeah.
And then it was a lot of the marketing time. And then the other thing we put a lot of time into is just building the framework and foundation for our firm, because we knew, look, we're set to succeed. We're going to succeed. We're going to do everything we can. And this is the time we have now to build that solid foundation through our case management software, through our policies, procedures, and everything we want this to look like. So it's easy to implement. Because what we saw with a lot of friends that had other firms and bigger firms is they're 5 years down the road now, and they've got a lot of train wrecks on their hand, and they got to, really implement good case management software, implement roles and how they're, running things. That's almost an impossible task once you got 20 people working for you if you're starting from scratch. So we took that time to lay that foundation then too.
Yeah. So it sounds like, Mike obviously had some business experience. He was in real estate. He had some family that were entrepreneurs. He comes from that space. Was that something you kind of rely a little bit more on him about? How did that dynamic work? Because a lot of times what you see is when somebody has a ton of experience, they kind of come in a little hot and say like, hey, this is the way it works, this is the way it should be. Clearly that's not your guys' relationship. You guys had a much more open discussion about stuff, but how did that work coming from when you Mike had that experience and you didn't? How did you guys manage setting up those systems?
Yeah. So, Mike's done a very good job of being very open-minded to my thoughts and opinions as well. And to be honest, although I certainly am perceived by everyone else as like the nice and friendly one and care about other people, that's all true. I agree with all that, but I definitely have strong opinions and beliefs in my ideas, and I put a ton of time in preparation. So, behind the scenes, I was pretty opinionated in a lot of things, right? And so we have learned how we communicate, which is the most important thing in any partnership. It's not even close. I can't even think of a close second. is just how to effectively communicate with each other to balance out those things, right? So we've both been, I feel, very open-minded to each other's ideas and how we could grow this thing and what we needed. So no one steamrolled anyone. If anything, I think Mike's felt I've steamrolled him more, and he's communicated that to me, which we've had to have conversations about, which then I've had to realize I need to pull back a little bit. So no, just communicate about all these things, and a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, and I'm going to poke a little bit more on that bear, because obviously you had dinner with Mike, you worked with him at the firm, then he went out on his own and did his own thing, and he's kind of come from that entrepreneurial background. A lot of people think about, partnering with friends that they've had in the past, and we've all seen it where it doesn't work out with folks for whatever reasons, right? Did you have to change your relationship with Mike? Because a lot of times when you were in that position where you were his superior at the office, clearly, because you had been there a while, you were a junior partner, to now becoming equal footing and having to understand that he may know more things than you may know more than him. Was there friction in that relationship early on, or how did you deal with that internally yourself?
No, you know what? We never had that friction early on. I think we had more friction as we grew in like a year or two, and it might have been dealing with egos or misconceptions of things we've had. But early on, less so. I never perceived, that's just not my personality to perceive I'm a superior or a boss, even with all of our staff. Clearly there's a hierarchy, obviously, or else things wouldn't work. We adhere to the hierarchy. But the way we interact and dialogue, it's very respectful. Let's get the right decision. Let's work together. Very collaborative is how we see everything. And that's how Mike and I largely were throughout the beginning. So it didn't go from, I was on a higher footing to now we're even. It was, I kind of always viewed it that way. And I feel like I missed part of your question. What was the rest of the part of the question?
Oh, I was just going to say, was there a transition period there, or was there anything like, there was an adjustment period that you had to internally kind of come to, but it sounds like you didn't, that was pretty easy for you.
Yeah, it really wasn't, and we've been good friends this whole time. And I feel like the one strength that I said that to me is the most important thing that I feel like we got right is we sat down from the very beginning and we had a conversation that this is a marriage. Right? Like, this is no question, this is a marriage. Most law firm partnerships fail. You've seen it time and time again, I'm sure, right? And it stems from a million different factors, but probably the biggest factor is just poor communication. So then egos get out of control, people get offended because they think they're being slighted. And then, you have money management issues, but like a lot of that all stems from communication. So from the very get-go, we've just aired our laundry with each other constantly, right? And it's there's been a lot of different times, whether it's public forum or just among staff, where he's felt I've said something, right? Like, hey, like, I feel like you're trying to attack me when you're saying this. And it's like, in my mind, 99% of the time, that was 0%. Didn't even cross my mind, but I see where you're coming from. All right, my bad. Let's work through this. Let's figure out how we could address this in the future. So even when things weren't intentional, you just address them so you're aware of where those soft spots are for each other.
Yeah, that's super important, because you don't know what how the other person perceives something. And so even if you may say something completely innocently, you didn't mean anything by it, you were just thinking out loud, or you just said it. The other person, that might be a sensitive spot, and you hit it, you didn't know. And if the other person doesn't say anything, you never knew that was an issue, and then it just keeps happening, and then it gets bottled up, and the resentment just grows. And we've seen that happen all the time. You see that happen with friendships outside of business. And when there's money involved, it can get even deeper. So I think what you say about, like, hey, if you feel some type of way about something, you got to have to speak up. Number one. Number two, I think another thing you said is super important is that sitting down and understanding that, hey, no matter what our relationship was before, like, now this is a different relationship, and we need to just be open about each other and open about our visions for the firm. Did you and Mike have a conversation early on where you discussed what you wanted the firm to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How did you get on the same page for the vision of the business?
I don't remember a specific conversation in that, but that conversation happens all the time now. And it did back then, like day one, I don't remember that conversation. But I think early on, right, it's, can we survive and build a law firm, right? So it's just, can we put food on the table? And that was our goal. And then as we started to grow, and I don't know what Mike shared, but, he's communicated this to me several times. He probably didn't necessarily have as much of the desire to let's grow and try to make this a really big, successful law firm. He was more, I'd rather keep it lean and, settle some really good cases, have some good money, live a good life, and take care of some people. I think the most fun thing for me that with the law firm is I love the growth. Like, I love the growth. I love the business side of it and seeing how big we can make this thing while still adhering to all the things we want to do, which is unparalleled customer service and how we do all these things and finding that way to grow it and make it successful. So we have to constantly have those conversations and say and we get on the same page with it. Right. And I think I don't think I know he's on the same page with, let's grow this thing as big as we can make it while we can still have the quality of lives we want and not sacrifice any of our family lives and anything else. So those are conversations we constantly have and should get on the same page with it.
And do you guys have set meetings now? Like, hey, once a quarter, we need to sit down and go over X, Y, Z? Or is it just you guys go to lunch together a couple times a week or whatever and have the discussions? How do you guys, when you say we constantly have those conversations, obviously you're running a firm, you have a million other things to do. How do you make sure to have those conversations and stay on the same page?
So we do and it helps keep us on track too, because it's so easy for us as partners to blow off those meetings to address all the big ticket items that probably need to be addressed. But we have quarterly reviews with every employee now. So every quarter we sit down, 5 to 25 minutes with every employee and go through things. So in preparation for that, it gives us an opportunity that we need to discuss where everyone's at, how they're succeeding, how we can help them get better, what they need to do, what we could do for them, and allows us to have those conversations then. So we have them more frequently than that, just at lunch or a random Thursday night. I call him or he calls me with a random idea, and then it spreads into a 2-hour-long conversation just because this is our life, right? And you know how it is. Yeah. And everyone that has started a law firm, this is your life. There's no days off. You need some days off every now and then. So it just comes up frequently. But the set quarters is kind of when we have those meetings, and then it bleeds over into just random days.
And not only are there no days off, but it should be what you want to talk about all the time, in my opinion, right? Those conversations I always looked forward to because they were exciting. We were talking about whatever issue needed to be fixed. We were talking about whatever vision we wanted to execute. And, that should excite you. That should be part of what your hobby is and what you care about, obviously with your personal life too. But in your career life, that's what's really different about working in the job at a firm versus running your own, is that you have much more invested and you get so much more joy from executing the vision you have. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. I think you said it perfectly. It's not a job. You've always had a job, right? And this is the first time in my life that this hasn't ever felt like a job. This has been a passion and something I love. Don't get me wrong. There's days it sucks. There's days I don't want to come to work. There's days I just want to shut my phone and computer off and not even think about it, right? Just because you need a break every now and then. But for the most part, yeah, it's so much fun coming up with a vision and goal, and then how are we going to achieve this, and then trying to build it from there. It's we all loved Legos as a kid. It's a life-size Lego puzzle that you got to try to piece together all the different pieces and build something great out of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you've never ran a business before your law firm. Did you ever have a moment where you were like, oh, this is very different and I need to learn these skills that I don't have? And what were those skills that you feel like you had to develop other than the outreach? You talked about needing to outreach, learning how to outreach, getting better at that. Other than that, what other skills did you feel like you had to kind of learn on the job that you weren't aware of before you left Weinberg Wheeler?
All of them, because it's, and I was preparing myself for the months before I left of the things we need to work on and grow. But, early on, it's just generating business. I've always been great with people and loved talking to people, but they ask, which, you know what I mean when I say they ask, right? They ask for business, and to cross that threshold, that was always uncomfortable to me, because then it felt like nothing was genuine that I was saying to them, and that oh, I really just want this relationship to somehow profit off you, is how I always perceived it, right?
Right.
It's honestly, of all things that sound stupid, that was the hardest thing for me to overcome, is being willing to be way more aggressive in generating business and how you go about that. And then after that, right, what's nice about starting your firm is like early on, it was just me and Mike. So like,
Yeah.
You got to learn as we're growing here on HR and business management and, all the different structures, bookkeeping and marketing and growth, right? But I would say the one thing that I love more than anything is the marketing component. So I probably put more time into marketing. And when I say marketing, it's talking about lead generation, period, of how to generate business. And, you just put so much time and energy. I can't tell you how many YouTube videos, how many podcasts, how many lunches, how many calls, how many mentors found and just exhausted to no end to learn all these things, right? And try to learn from everyone else's mistakes. So that was a long-winded answer to your short question of, you have to learn everything, right? And a personal injury law firm is so different than so many other businesses.
Yeah, it really is, because it's not a cash flow forward business. You don't get, you don't sell a widget and get cash day one. You sign up all these clients, you have to service the clients, and then you don't get cash for a year and a half, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, depending on the cases. And so you're still constantly investing in your overhead, et cetera, and your cash is very delayed on when you can get more. But I want to touch on what you talked about, which is, how you got better is that you spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, talking to mentors, et cetera. Was there any specific type of podcast, video, et cetera, that you felt like this was giving me great insight and I would recommend?
Well, one in particular, which, I don't necessarily recommend getting into this at all for people that are new into it, is for SEO. Rand Fishkin is his name. He SEO guru, and he's just done a great job monetizing it, to be honest with you, and publishing the material. So SEO, I can't tell you, I've watched hundreds of hours of Rand Fishkin videos on SEO and how to properly grow it. And I'm still learning, and things get going well, and then you plummet in some rankings for some things, and it's just never ending. That I would say that's what I looked at more than anything when it came to YouTube videos and all that, because a lot of people just don't know it, don't understand it.
Yeah, so
books.
SEO.
I mean, obviously, a ton of books, but like, to me, I never focused too much on like specific personal injury related books, other than books from John Morgan, because they just inspire you. I don't know if you've read any of those.
You can't teach hungry.
Oh yeah,
can't
that's
teach
the first I was
vision.
gonna say. Yeah,
Classic.
it's just they, they're so inspiring. You read those, you just want to go take over the world. John Morgan pretty much has taken over the world, so he's accomplished that. But they're so motivating. But I just love any, mental growth, leadership type books. Fantastic.
Were there any specific books that you felt, really stood out that made an impact on you?
Man, I can't think of labels off the top of my head. Hire Slow,
okay.
Fire Fast is a fantastic book, but you don't need to read it. Literally, hire slow, fire fast. That's the whole principle. I'll save you a lot of time. No, I'll have to think of some of those other names. I don't have any names off the top of my head.
The reason I ask is because learning anything new is obviously difficult. Clearly, there's a transition from, being a lawyer, focusing on the law, focusing on being the best lawyer you can be, to then trying to become the best business person you can be. Were there any moments where you made decisions based on stuff you learned and then realized, well, that was a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, and learn from them? And if so, we'd love an example.
Man, I think hiring and firing is the best example. That's one of the hardest things you could do. And, we put so much time into the culture and want to get the right team. But early on here, the problem is, and I want to be careful how you say these things, don't want to sound offensive, but like, you just don't have money to pay the right people. You're so poor, you need some help once we got going after a couple of months. But you could only afford what you could afford. So we just made hiring decisions based on, who has a pulse and would take this low of a check.
Yeah.
And, as you do, and I don't know that it was a mistake is the thing though, because that's all we could afford.
Yeah.
But what happened, kept those people around out of loyalty. And then this goes back to the hire slow, fire fast, right? Some of those people end up becoming very toxic, right? And affecting the firm as we grew. So going back, would I do it differently? I don't know, because it's all we could afford, but I will warn, you have to have a short leash with people, and your culture and your environment is everything. I think we have such a great culture now that everyone loves being here. But man, it was a lot of firings, unfortunately. Man, we had some story. We hired one girl. She was fantastic. Couldn't figure out why, right? Didn't do our due diligence because we're still learning this process. This is very early on. And, it was like week 2 and she comes back from lunch just hammered, trying to answer the phones. We're like, oh my gosh, had to call her in and send her home polite. Very respectful, but obviously we had to let her go. It's like, we've had instances like that. And then we've had some cancers along the way just because they get entitled or insecure and then they're battling other employees. And like, you just have to nip those things in the butt. But, the hiring and firing is one of the trickiest things. And I think so many people don't want to do the hard thing, which is you got to let people go. You got to let people go and you got to get the right people in place. Because at the end of the day, this is the baby, right? If we don't feed this firm and make this firm as successful as possible, just out of loyalty or out of feeling bad, the whole thing's going to die and we're all going to sink with it.
Yeah. I mean, the way I've always looked at it is this business is a separate entity from me. I'm just an employee of the corporation and we need to do what's best for the corporation because the corporation feeds a lot of people. It feeds not just myself and my business partner, the other attorneys, the other staff. It feeds all of the vendors that we use. And so we're all responsible for making sure the corporation is healthy. And if you've got somebody in there that's toxic and making other people not want to come into work and not want to do their job properly and not care for the clients, it's hard. You have to surgically remove it. And it's hard. It's the worst part of being a business owner is sending somebody home and saying, hey, you just can't work here anymore. But it's an absolute necessary part and you have to do it. Transitioning a little to marketing, clearly you were learning about SEO. You were watching, videos and reading books and stuff like that on becoming better at marketing. You guys settled this big case. Was it a decision to just take that money and start investing in some marketing, or what did you guys do on how you ramped up your marketing?
Well, most everyone could do the math on that, right, of how much money that is. But again, that was a 1/3 referral fee on that, and then taxes came. So it was still a massive chunk of money, which was so nice. But early on, and again, learn from mentors, different people, right? Like ask all the questions, talk to as many people as you can to learn what they did and didn't do, but didn't jump straight into SEO. And I want to recommend that to anyone because SEO is a long play. You're looking, all right, can this help us 2 to 3 years from now? And you're dumping, 8 to 10 to 12, whatever you want in a month. So you could just hemorrhage money in SEO if you're not spending in the right place. But early on, simple things, really early on, the best thing to do is, like we said, just lunches with friends, family, other lawyers, right? And get those referral fees. It's a low-hanging fruit, right? People want to help you. And when you're taking people to lunch and interact with them and treat people right, they want to help you. That's the low-hanging fruit that you got to attack first. No question. So much time and energy in that, right? And then as you start generating money, right, you have some money you could spend. I think a lot of people are very afraid of lead generation, rightfully so. I mean, I can tell you one story. Gave this guy 10 grand and, took us 6 months to get it back by fighting with the credit card company. It was a complete scam. He got me, tip of the cap to him. He got me, but we got our money back,
Yeah.
But if you do your due diligence, know the right questions to ask for lead generation, know how to properly monitor it. There's not a lot of them, but there's several that are very profitable and will send you great cases. Now, that's not building your brand necessarily,
right?
But it's sending you leads and it's a shot in the arm of cases right away, which is such a good avenue. And now what you could do, which I think we've done a great job of, is remarket the hell out of all your current and past clients. So, as corny as it is, send out cards. They get, happy birthday cards, holiday cards, some other random card we send throughout the year. They get newsletters, and we just stay constant contact because the biggest thing with all forms of marketing is top of mind, right? I could think of a buddy of mine who's wanted to do some work with me for a while, but he never talks about it with me, other than just a random once in the moon. We don't talk about his work much, and so it never comes to my mind. And so, a year ago, I went with someone else, and then I talked to him, and he's like, dude, we didn't get a shot at this. What's going on? I'm like, dude, it just never even came to my mind. I never even thought of it, and I feel horrible. I felt horrible.
Oh, the worst feeling for me, or the biggest knock on myself was when I would hear of somebody that their friend or whatever got in a car accident. Obviously, you wish them well, but then they end up hiring somebody else, and you're like, wait a minute, why didn't you think of me? They're like, I totally forgot you did that. If you forgot, then that's on me. That's my fault.
Yes. You got to take inventory of yourself at that point, because
Yeah.
if your friends and family aren't aware that that's what you do. I had that recently. I teach a class to these high school. It's a religious class in the mornings to these high school kids, and I didn't care. Wasn't anything good anyways, but it made me reevaluate, because I'm with these kids 3 days a week, talk to their parents, communicate often, right? We're talking about throughout the whole school year. And someone got in an accident, and not really hurt. They're fine, but they're like, oh yeah, we called this lawyer that someone knew from something. And I was like, man, I spent so much time with them.
Yeah.
And they didn't think to like, oh, let me talk to Tim, who I see every day almost.
Right.
And that's what, to me, I was like, man, I'm doing something wrong on this one. I need to make this a little more clear, right? Not a big deal, but like, you got to take some inventory check.
Yeah, and I think along the way, you're going to take some of these L's, right? Like, this is going to happen, and this is the only way to learn and grow, and everybody's so afraid of making a bad decision, making a bad hire, signing up with the wrong company, like what you're talking about spending 10 grand with this company, and then not only getting 0 leads and then having to spend lawyer time trying to claw the money back, but that is part and parcel of the process. There is nobody that starts a business, law firm or otherwise, and then just has a smooth sailing from day one all the way throughout. So I think that's, those kind of L's that come along the way are just part of it. I mean, other than that, like $10,000 deal that you didn't turn into anything, were there any other like big losses or big L's? It doesn't have to be big money wise, but just one you felt like, man, that was an L and I learned from that one.
Before I say that, you just said essentially what's my all-time favorite quote, which is, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. I actually have that hanging up here in my office. Because of that, like, I don't know that I have any regrets with anything because of what you said. It's all these bumps along the road. As long as you are willing to persevere and fight and learn from them, right? Like, that's what makes your business so much more successful. Yeah. That's where you grow from. That's what you learn from. And that's how this thing becomes successful, right? Like, yeah, we've had a lot of small hiccups here and there by dumb things, and whether it's hiring or deciding to put money here, but you learn from every one of those things, and now it's cool. Never make that mistake again. Now we can look for A, B, and C. Yeah. And now we're going to be better because of this, right? So like, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. That is like my all-time favorite quote. I say it all the time.
But I mean, it's so true. It's so true, because it's just you. And then if you've built a big firm with no mistakes or no issues or nothing, and then something big comes and it ruins your day, you don't know how to handle it because you've never been there before. So all these little small bumps, there's a few catastrophic mistakes you have to avoid. Don't blow any statutes, nothing like that. Like, avoid the catastrophic mistakes. But those little small things along the way are just part of growth. It's just how it is. There's no way around it.
And this is a very good miss, but it answers your question. This is recently. We had I wanted to get more clients. How can we diversify and get in other markets? And like, I wanted to get into some mass torts. I don't know why I got the bug about it, because I had a buddy that was doing it. And so many calls, so much reading. And then I've spent, 50 to 100 hours on this at this point. And I got something that I think I'm feeling good about. I want to lock it in. I get Mike in at that point, get him on the call, get him on board that he's excited too. And I'm like, we're talking, gosh, how much was it? $120,000 something we're going to dump into it. And I'm all in. I'm like, I believe this. And then we get another, who you obviously know who it is, Peter. Get Peter on the phone, right? Great mentor. Love this man more than anything. He's done so much for us. I expressed that to him a couple days ago when I saw him. Got him on the call because he did mass torts, and like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Fully expected him to be like, awesome, go for it. This can be good. His response is like, you guys would make such a terrible mistake. You'd be such an idiot for this. This is going to fail. Here's why. A, B, and C, going through it all. Literally, I was going to sign it that day. Like, we were going to sign it. And so we pulled back, and we're both like, gosh, damn it. Should we not do this? Like, we decided not to. I swear on my life, Pratik, it was like, gosh, 5 days later, I think, the one we're going to dump all our money in. And I even forgot what class action it was, because I just blocked this all in my mind. I'm never doing mass torts. It was like 5 days later. Judge threw out all the claims. All those cases went by, like, every one of them disappeared. I'm like, if we would have dumped 120 grand, there's no recovering from that. Like,
zero.
We're gone. We would have literally just set 120,000 on fire
within 5 days.
Oh my gosh. And how would I have been able to look at Mike? Because it was 100% Mike pushing and doing it. He would have wanted to kill me, rightfully so too. But
Yeah.
Luckily, again, this comes back to just communicate with anyone and everyone that you know and bounce your ideas off them. A lot of people that are a lot smarter than you.
Yeah, no, that's super.
That wasn't an attack on you,
that.
Pratik. That was like speaking metaphorically. Right? I wasn't saying a lot of people are smarter than Pratik.
No, there are.
Pratik.
Yeah, there are like one or two people smarter than me for sure. Yeah, I'm sure you can find them. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But there is such. I mean, it happened to me all the time. It still happens to me where I get like almost entrepreneur ADD or something, right? Where I'm like, I see all these shiny objects that I'm like, oh my God, I'm missing out on something. I need to go be a part of that. And having to check myself and say, I need to stay in my lane. I know what I'm good at, and I just need to stay there and just keep doing what I'm good at. And over time, I'll be fine. And if I keep chasing these little shiny objects that come along the way, all I'm going to do is get taken because I don't know that area. I don't know that space, whether it's mass torts or class actions or, investing in certain businesses. I get calls from time to time. People are like, I'm doing this real estate development project. I'm like, I don't know anything about real estate. If you were to take my money, I wouldn't know what would happen. Like, I wouldn't know what to do. And maybe I'd make money on it. I don't know, but it just doesn't feel comfortable. And I've now gotten to the point where, maybe there's a little bit of maturity in the businessman where like, it was hard in the beginning to think that I might miss out on a return. Now it's easy that I'm okay missing out on that return. I'm just going to stay in my lane and focus. And it seems like that was part of that experience for you.
Big time, right? And rely on those people that know better because of that. And I've learned that even with SEO is I could think of so many businesses that they just think throwing money at the problem, right? Like just throw money at it, things will get better. Like you got to be an expert on most of the stuff yourself, or at least have the expert in house to monitor and make the right decisions. Because if not, most of these companies, man, they'll take you.
Yeah, they'll take. They're there to sell their prospect. And the mass tort stuff. I used to have people come up to me and be like, look, if you invest X amount of dollars, we'll get you so many leads, you'll make money. And I'm like, if it was that easy, like you wouldn't be talking to me because I'm a nobody. And there's a million other people you'd be talking to that would have taken that opportunity before me. That why are we having this conversation? That was always my hesitation there. And I think that's part of it is just like, I feel like if there's some really great opportunity and ends up going to some big time person before it even gets to me. And I'm sure I miss out on some stuff because I think like that, but I avoid big losses too.
No, I mean, that's the old adage, right? Of like, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Give us the $1,000, we'll give you $10,000 in 3 months.
Yeah.
There's probably something wrong here, right? And if it does work, someone's going to jail.
Someone's going to jail, right?
Yeah.
Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, had this great quote where she says, something along the lines of, if somebody's making you feel fearful or greedy, run the other way. If you can feel yourself feeling fearful or greedy, it's time to run the other way because there's something going on. And I always think of that quote in those situations. But let's go back to kind of, you first met Mike through these mentoring dinners at the school. Are you still doing those dinners?
Less frequently. We probably should do them more, but that's the reality of growth, right? Like, that doesn't seem like, and it sounds maybe wrong to say it, but it doesn't seem like our bang for our buck's there anymore, right? To spend that much individual time with each person when we have so many other avenues to generate business and so many other things going on with the business. We still probably should, because the reality is we've met so many good people through them, and referred people to other jobs, which established long connections. So now that we've had this talk and I'm saying this all out loud, I'm going to reach out and schedule it.
Oh man, don't blame me.
100% blame you. You take all responsibility. In fact, I'm going to send you the bill afterwards. This one's on you.
Yeah, right. Well, it won't get paid. So going back, I mean, if you were to talk to those law students today, would you feel like you'd be giving them different advice than you would have given them when you were at Weinberg Wheeler?
Oh, yeah. Because I'm in a whole other world now, right? Back then it was, you get a good job, you go work your tail off and become an expert in some part of the field, and you climb the corporate ladder. Now, that sounds like misery to me. I couldn't imagine going back and doing that. Mike and I've had that conversation of like, let's say, and hopefully we continue to work hard and this continues to grow and be profitable. Like, let's say everything fell apart. Like, what would you do? I don't know that I could go back and work at a defense firm. In fact, I'll tell you right now, I can't go back and work at a defense firm. I couldn't start over and do that again. It just sounds so miserable. So, if you have and some people, everyone's wired differently, but like, if you have a desire to shoot your shot, shoot your shot, man. The biggest fear to me would be to not do it and then look back at the regret of what you could have had, rather than do it and fail. Which the man in the arena, I'm sure you've heard the speech of Theodore Roosevelt. It's like my favorite thing, right? It's
Me too.
It's better to be the one that fails than to be known as one of the cold and timid souls that neither knows victory or defeat. It's like, I could not agree more. Like, last thing I want is 10 years from now to look back and be like, oh man, I could have had a successful firm and had so much fun and give all these people these great jobs and great environments and help change their lives. Instead, I'm, billing hours still for AIG, who doesn't care about me or my family.
Right. And failure's not that bad. It really just isn't. Like, everybody puts this up at this big thing, like, oh my God, what am I going to tell my friends and family? It didn't work out, this and that. Like, I see people that start their firm and it ends up not working out. They're fine. Like, you don't even think about them. Like, they're doing people think about you less than you think that they think about you, if that makes sense. Like, people are not thinking about you. So go do whatever it is you want to do. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's going to be just fine. As long as your family, your support system, your wife, your kids, your husband, whatever it may be, is on board and understands the risks that comes with that decision and is on board with you, then who cares about anybody else outside of that little group? Because that's what matters. That's who you're doing this for. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you had that conversation and you tried it. Because I agree with you, Tim, which is, if you don't do it, and then you're, 50, 60, 70 years old, and you look back and you say, why didn't I do it? What was the big deal? Nobody, I'm not going to sit here, and the whole point of this podcast is to not tell people, go do it, you're going to become a millionaire. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I am saying that the juice is worth the squeeze. And you don't know what's going to happen. You may fail. It may not work out. But so what if it doesn't? You're not going to die.
I literally just had, and I love all that, Pratik. I just had this conversation with a good buddy that actually works at my old law firm, who's going to do the same thing here very soon. And I told him, like, I was so afraid of this risk and this failure of, like, what am I going to do? And then you finally realize, like, what are you really risking? Like, if this fails, if I really had to, even though I told you I wouldn't go back and do it, if you had to, I'd go back and you could, if you've done this long enough and you've been working hard, like, you could you have a law degree, you go make a 6-figure job. It's like, what are you really risking?
Yeah.
Your basement, if you've been practicing for long enough, like, your basement is you fail and you have an opportunity to still make double the money of, like, an average American because you have the law degree.
Right.
Like, your basement is so much higher than everyone else. You're not going to be homeless. Once I got that irrational fears out of my head of, like, my kids are going to be begging on the street. Like, once I got all those irrational fears out, it's like, all right, screw it. Let's sell the house. Let's go for it. Let's do it.
I love that. 2 more questions and we can wrap up. First, I ask this to every guest, and so I want to get your thoughts on it too. If you could go back to that, kind of early 2018, late 2017, when you were starting to make that decision to leave, what advice would you give to Tim Mott back then?
Oh, I actually think I answered it, Pratik. I think I gave it away, which is, you got to eliminate, but part of it is you got to go through that process of building that fear to build the courage. But shoot your shot. You're not risking anything. It's so much better to be one of the individuals that shoots your shots and fails to be the one that never took his shot, which is why I referenced Man in the Arena. I have it hanging right there in my office. I read it almost, not daily, probably 2 to 3 times a week. Because it's so much better to be the one that just goes for it. Take your shot. Don't live in fear. Don't live in risk of failure. Don't worry about what other people are doing or saying. There's a lot of people that were adamant we're going to fail, including people at our last law firm. Yeah. It was kind of like, oh, PI law firm, good luck.
Yeah.
They'll roll the eyes like, you're going to fail. See you in 6 months, buddy. Right? Yeah. And use that as fuel if you need to, but don't get paralyzed by the fear. Just freaking go for it. Stay positive. There's highs and lows. And sometimes the lows are really low. They lower than they would have been otherwise. Highs are going to be a lot higher. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
But just have confidence in yourself and in the process and just shoot your shot.
I love that. And then my last question for you is, one of the things you talked about with your wife when you were leaving was, spending more time at home and being able to make your kids games. How's that happen? Are you making all your kids games? How's that working out?
Absolutely. Quality of life it's not even comparable. And the one thing I told Mike, right, is I want to continue to grow this as big as we could grow to be successful as we can, so long as we can have the quality of lives that we want. So if we're getting too big and I have too much responsibility and too much time commitments, then I need to hire someone that can help fill those voids, right? And probably the next one in the future is going to be someone to help me out more with marketing, right? Because I put so much time into that. That way I could still have the quality of life. Because the second I start sacrificing that quality of life at home with my wife and kids, which I sacrificed throughout law school for 6 years of my career, where I was doing 60 plus hours a week all the time, nonstop. As soon as I have to sacrifice that again, then I'm pulling back. We're going to pull back, or we're going to hire more people to do things for us, because I refuse to make that sacrifice again, my wife and kids.
I love that. That's just a non-negotiable, and that's just the way it's got to be. I love that. And on that, I think that's a great place for us to end. So for everybody listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrapped Solo. And remember, just because guys like Tim make it look effortless doesn't mean that it is. And one ask for everybody here, if you enjoyed the pod, please share it where you share stuff, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, anywhere. That's the only way we grow, so we can continue to have great guests like Tim. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. You can find Tim. Tim, please tell people where they can find you.
Social media, our website, Valiente Mott. We're all over social media. Or you could always, if you have personal questions, and I'm talking to other lawyers out there, emails tim@valientemott.com, or you could get my cell phone off Pratik or whoever, or email me. I'll give you my cell phone. Happy to talk to anyone anytime.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tim. This was a great time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pratik.